So I just finished the music for this movie. It was like 50 minutes of music, 24 days. And so a lot of music is there. So the mix had to happen during the composing, meaning there was not mixing after the composing process. So the music has to sound perfect during the composing. You are done. Basically, I do a little bit of quick mix during the composing process, and there's this one plugin that makes all the difference. And I did a live class in Momentum explaining how I've got this configured, so this is the class. Oh, and by the way, one of the students submitted music to a production music library, and they said the music rocks, but the mix sucks. He just added that plugin, and they said rock and roll. So there you have it. Oh, and the plugin is free. What I am doing is, in my stems, I've got a series of things. These are my stems. So orchestra, percussion, synths, lead, bass, other. So I'm gonna bypass this guy with... Let me just grab a string song like this. Now, so basically, as you can see, just brightens the sound. Generally, this is something that we would do at the mastering stage. You've got all your music and you're just adding the final touches, and sometimes you're gonna add a little bit of brightness to your mix. This is one of the tricks that is going to add a little bit of loudness perception. You know when you're done mixing your music and then you're gonna listen back to different systems and you're just like, it sounds so different in the car. I sound so different, you know, when I'm using these guys. Right? The reason is generally, especially these high-end headphones, the speakers as well, they tend to be very bright. It's not that they are bright, they're flat, but they're very good at reproducing the high frequencies. And so when we mix, we're mixing based on what we hear. And so when we listen it back in another system, let's say a car, that generally is not like a three-way speaker system or a good headphones. Some of the things that we are going to start hearing less, the high frequencies. And when we don't hear the high frequencies, basically high frequencies is what opens the mix, what adds definition to the mix. So it's a common practice to, at the mastering stage, in the mixing stage as well, you're gonna be brightening some instruments when they need to be brightened. But in the mixing stage, we're gonna add a little bit of brightening. It's called exciter. We're gonna use an exciter module. And that helps a lot. That helps a lot when, you know, playing it back in something like this, or in your car. That helps a lot. And so this particular plugin is called Fresh Air. It's free. Now you gotta be very careful with this type of plugins because our ear gets used very quickly to adding a little bit of brightness, high frequencies, excitement, and when you get rid of it, it's like, oh, the music sounds too dull, sounds bad, we can't listen back to the music without, so we have to be very careful, and the amount that I'm adding is very subtle. Generally what I'll do is 28-18. This is kind of like the mid heights, and these are the high frequencies. And generally we would do this in the mastering stage. Then why am I doing it in every single stem? Well, because I want that processing printed in each one of the stems, because I'm delivering stems and master track, but they most likely are going to use the stems. If I do this processing the master track and then they use the stems, then my music sounds the way it sounded before, and I want that processing printed in my stems. So this is something that I highly recommend. It's a free plugin. Add a little bit of that in your last track or in your stems. I prefer to have it in my stems. And in your last track, something like this, in your master track here, or in your stems, the same way that I did it, it will help a lot. You'll thank me later. This is great. I've got more things, but this is the one that is most important. I also have a little bit of compression and a little bit of tape saturation. These are just some fancy plugins that will add a little bit of compression, will open the mix, will add a little bit of color and tape saturation. It's nice to have, non-mandatory, but this guy makes a big difference.